All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're going to start right now. And thank you for joining Ginanda, Gikendaasomin, Agendaso, Wigamid, the Red Cliff Library. We seek to learn library, tribal library. And tonight it's our pleasure to present a chat with Jim Pete with Guyaushk. And it's just a little bit of history, a little bit of, it's just trying to learn some things, as time goes on, where we just start losing some of those stories and some of those, who lived here and who lived there, and, all the fun stuff that we hear about all the time. So Jim has done us the honor to say yes. So, you know, if you have any people that you wish to hear in the future, just leave us a message, and we would like to invite them also to just have a chat. It's informal chat, no politics, no, just a good time. And I'm kind of not very techy, but I'll try to make sure that I look on here, and if anybody has a question, that I get that to Jim. So anyways, he is starting. So I have to tell you also that I am writing everybody's name down, even online. So if you just have like just Steve, or Shane, or LG, I don't know who you are. And at the end of the program, Jim is doing 4 drawings, and so everybody's name is on here. But if you can put it in the comment section, at least your full name, or so that we can see it on the screen or something, then we can make sure that you're in the drawings. I'm going to get out of the way. Oops. And then can everybody see Jim on the screen? I can't see him over here, so you can't see him? Okay, thank you.
I can see you.
Paul, you can see me?
I can see you.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, great. Hey, Mona. You got a lot of cousins here too.
Cool. Love that.
Well, I want to welcome you all for coming here, and there's a couple of things I need to do before I get started. And one of those that I've learned over the years when talking in front of people is, especially with elders, is to apologize, for talking in front of them. So I do apologize to those that are my elders. The other part is also in this continuous learning, even though I've been involved in it for many years, still learning about our language. And I do have to apologize in the event that I say something in our language and maybe I say it incorrectly or say it wrong, and kind of nervous and still learning and stuff like that. So I also want to apologize for those that are more fluent in me. What I went around and did was did the smudging with sage, and then also my granddaughter is here, Ava, and she helped with passing around tobacco ties. And even though you're in Zoom land or WebEx land or whatever land you're in, you were also included in that smudging. It's a way of cleansing and purification. So buju anin nindin away makanidug. Ibiguchuendam Gakinuya Debiashaye Guma. Ninja Kazan Shinabi Guyaushk Jim Jim Pete in Dunjaba, Gaa-Miskwaabikaang in Dunjaba, Mekasi and Doding. I said, welcome all my relatives, and I'm glad that you're able to make it here today. And in the Anishinaabe language, my Indian or spirit name is Guyaushk or Seagull, and in English it's Jim Pete, and I come from Red Cliff. And again, in this thing about learning things over the years, one of the names that we would go by that the elders told me when I was growing up is Red Cliff was referred to as Gikendaasomin. And for most of you know where the casino is and know where the bay is there in the marina. And what I understand is that, you know, as our people came into the area and they go around to the different locations, hunting, gathering, fishing, they go to the islands and do that. When they would come into this area, they would refer to it because the bay is there. Gikendaasomin, there is a bay, and now that's called Buffalo Bay. And then also recently, whatever that means, we also go by the term Gaa-Miskwaabikaang, and as I understand it, it's relates to the red sandstone cliffs that are along the lakeshore here, and also from the Eagle clan. And so it is an honor to be asked to share things, and it's something that's been a lifelong learning experience that I've had. It just seems like ever since I can remember, I've always been drawn to the either traditions or the culture, and trying to learn the language. And so it's been a honor to be able to do that. Also, when I started getting asked to do talks in front of people, I decided to go and I approached 4 elders in our community and asked for their advice and asked for their, I guess, kind of like blessing, to be able to do that. And they did, offer that, but they also offered about, being careful of, there's times when you can't share certain things in front of certain people. And so, I have to also kind of be with that. And so, but it's still, that idea of getting that advice from our elders. For myself, I'll be 68 in July this year, and some people are funny about telling about their age, and I'm not really, because again, in getting asked to talk about different things, especially Red Cliff, it's a reflection of when I was born in 1956, and then as started, aging, seeing a lot of changes within our community that were occurring. And so hopefully that in sharing these, people will have an understanding about a part of Red Cliff. Some of the key words that always kind of pop into place are transition, diversity, and the word depends. And I used to kind of laugh about when I'd say, well, it depends. And I would say, well, it's not the kind that you wear, until I had urinary tract infection and I had to wear Depends, so I don't joke around too much with it because it wasn't fun, I'll tell you. But sometimes, when people ask things or want to share things, I'll have to say, well, it kind of depends, what it means. So transition, depends, and diversity will probably, come up throughout. One piece is when I get asked about something concerning our traditions or teachings or our culture, I tell people that it depends. No, I tell people, if you were to write your little concern or question or whatever on one of those sticky notes and you put it on the wall, there might be 100, there might be 1,000 there. I said it's like taking a dart and just throwing it, and wherever that dart lands, that's where you start, because it's such a intense, it's such a diverse piece that we have, in trying to understand who we are as Anishinaabe people. And so when I teach classes or whatever and trying to figure out, where do you start? Well, there's a couple of different parts of this. One is pertaining to our culture and our traditions, and the other part is just, sort of like everyday life, as we know it. And so what I mentioned to people, I said a really good place to start is this book by Edward Ben Beneba called The Mishomis Book, The Voice of the Ojibwe. And I know a lot of people have seen this, and it's used, quite extensively. And I'm hoping that out there in WebEx land you can see this. But in the idea of where do we begin, well, when we talk about our Anishinaabe ways, one piece that is in this book that helps us understand a little bit, and it's up to us to kind of go into it more detailed, but it's about our creation story that's in here. And I think throughout the world, each culture has their own different creation story. How that happened, not just the Adam and Eve type of creation story, but there's others. So within here is a creation story. Also within here is what is referred to as our migration. And so at one point, thousands of years ago, I guess, we were in the kind of the St. Lawrence Seaway area, and it's believed that our medicine people, our spiritual people, shared with us that we're supposed to migrate to an area where food grew on the water. And it wasn't really known what that meant, but that migration started. And some people says on that migration, it was like about a 700-year, maybe to 1,000-year journey that we took. We had 6 stops along the way. And again, it explains this. Nobody ever calls him when I'm in the bathroom, unless I'm in the bathroom or whatever.
I'll tell her he's done hard.
So with that migration story, like I mentioned throughout this, and you can find it in here where we stopped. One of the places that it was felt that we were supposed to be at was an island that's up where Cloquet is located, Duluth, in the St. Louis River area, and I believe they call it Spirit Island. And that was like the 6th stop. But it seemed like the medicine and spiritual people felt it just didn't feel right, so they sent people out to look. And I guess as they got into Lake Superior, from what I understand, it was so foggy that it was hard for them to just see even in front of them. And there was this bird that was coming there, and one called it a golden-breasted woodpecker, and one calls it a flicker bird. But anyway, it was that bird that came there, and it helped kind of guide them over to where Madeline Island was. And then it was discovered or found, or that, that was the final place that we're supposed to be at. And again, I'm not an archaeologist or a historian or whatever like that, so have no idea exactly, but I've heard we've been connected with Madeline Island maybe about 1,000 years now. So again, that a part that became our traditional homeland. And so if you have a chance, if you haven't already, again, this is just a really good resource to help us understand, where we came from and how we got into this area here and the significance that we have, with Madeline Island, Moning, Gwinnett, Quaning. I asked a couple of people here, friends of mine, if they would also help, as we share different things. And so I did ask Teresa Gordon, Teresa Fox, and then my cousin Carolyn, Charette Gouget, Paulus, Gordon, Flo. No. So, they also might help with this because, again, it's a couple of different ways, that we're going to look at things or try to talk about things. One part in growing up, and again in the late 50s, we were at a point in Red Cliff where we were lost a lot of our culture, a lot of our traditions. Our language was on its way out, and there was people that was concerned about that. So there was efforts started to try to do that retention. And from what I can remember, like in the late 50s and 60s, we might have had 1 or 2 people that had their regalia, we didn't have any drummers or singers. Again, our language was on its way out, but it started resurfacing. So one of the persons, that really helped start that off was Dolores DePerry Bainbridge. And when she taught it, at that time, she was able to utilize this dictionary, a dictionary of the Ojibwe language by Frederick Barraga. And sort of in general, Father Barraga came into this area in the mid 1800s, and he ended up learning our language fluently. And then from there, he decided to create an alphabet system so that he could translate our language into a written format. So when Dee would teach that, she would use the spelling and stuff from Father Barraga's dictionary. Again, as people were concerned into the late 1960s and stuff, for those that were fluent speakers, they wanted to also go more into a written. And so this is one book or dictionary that's used quite a bit in a lot of different areas, a concise dictionary of the Minnesota Ojibwe. And it's this double vowel system. And so what I understand now, as people are learning our language and learning it in a written way, they're basing it off, the double vowel system. I kind of struggle sometimes with that because in learning the language, when I did, especially from Dee with that Father Barraga's dictionary, I can basically read that, because that's what I learned. I'm still trying to learn the double vowel system. So when I spell words, sometimes it's a combination of Father Barraga's way, the double vowel system way, and then also I use the phonetic way, the way that it sounds to me. And sometimes it works okay, and other times people could be kind of critical. But it's just this learning. To me, it's more important learning a language when you can actually hear it and be a part of that. And so just trying to share some of that, because it also goes into like our transition of what we went through and what we're still going through. And as I thought about this session, and thought about what to share and how to share, I had to write some notes down to help me. But again, for some reason, I had this calling ever since I can remember to our traditions and culture, and where the Legendary Waters Convention Center is now, that's where the old Red Cliff Community Hall was. Some would remember that. About 1972, because it was such an important part of our community, they did move it over, and it was in that last location there. But I can remember it was summer, riding my bike. I might have been 8 years old or so, and at the front of the community hall, they had this area where that's where the main entrance was, and there was Idell, Duffy, Sisnawago, Myrtle Basney, and maybe a couple of others that they had it set up out there where they were selling beadwork. And it was just interesting because, not that I'd never seen it, but it was interesting that they were doing that they were making it available if there was any tourists that were going by, so that's what started my interest in trying to learn about first the beadwork and stuff. Sometime later on, maybe the next year or so, Sis was married to Sammy Nawago, and Sammy made me a loom so that I could start learning how to do loom work, like headbands, and things for belts and stuff like that. So it was a real draw, and started, this process that's been, still going on for over 60 years. But it's the idea too about, concerned about losing our Red Cliff culture. And so again, through that Mishomis book, talks about, overall the Anishinaabe. And then as we, eventually ended up at Madeline Island, and most of you heard or are aware that, they had the signing of the Treaty of 1854 there that established reservations. So then, we went to our different reservations like Bad River and Lac du Flambeau and the Coudray and Red Cliff. And so even though we have this is my point of view, observation, we have this, overall Ojibwe teachings, culture, language. Each community is a little bit different, and we have our own community culture. And so sometimes people would be very critical that, geez, Redcliffe, you're so assimilated, you're not Indian enough. Well, I think what people were thinking is that you were only Indian if you did the powwows and had the regalia. And there were certain words you could use a long time ago that were acceptable. So for regalia, we could say costumes or Indian costumes. We could use the word squaw. There was squaw bread, squaw burgers, squaw lake. We had some people with the nickname squaw. Well, over the years, we found out that, it's not appropriate to call her regalia costumes because that's what you wear at Halloween. And then for that word squaw, it was discovered that I can't remember what tribe it was from, but it was a derogatory thing that referred to somebody that was liking like an Indian woman, that they would refer to them as squawmen, meaning like their private areas. So it was discovered that it was really a negative thing, to use that word squaw. And so, over the years in our transition and our diversity, we've also learned things, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. But when I was thinking about, our Red Cliff culture, again, when you stop and think about it, even though we didn't have the powwow, so to speak, or the drumming and singing, so to speak, we were pretty strong within our culture, um, and concerned about, that we'd be losing part of that. So at one gathering, I asked, it was some class I was teaching, and I asked them if they ever had lugolate. And what was surprising, sadly, is that people at that younger age did not hear about it, did not know what lugolate was. And so started introducing it, bringing it, making it, and at least it was a part of trying to share what part of our community culture was. And so one of the sessions that Dee Bainbridge did, she said she was reading a book somewhere, and it was like from 200 years ago, and that lugolate had been a part of our community in Redcliffe for like 200 years. And here we were getting to a point where we were losing that for some reason. So it's been introduced. Another one, and again, some of you might remember this, but a long time ago, well, now they call it Gordon Road, just up the road here. But it used to be called Alec Roy Road. And somebody that was a Gordon, young person that was a Gordon, was upset because someone had stole that Gordon sign, took it off there. Well, it had to be a Gordon. Who else would want it? No. But took that sign, and she posted on Facebook, and she was just all upset. And she said, but I guess it used to be known as a different name. And I said, well, it used to be called Alec Roy Road. And she wrote back, and she was probably like 23, 24 years old or so. And she said, who is Alec Roy? And again, that just surprised me. And it was just devastating that, here is Alec Roy, one of our, not only elders, but, one of our ancestors that was so involved in our community back in 1934 and 36 when we adopted our Constitution. He was on our first council, spent many years as our tribal chairperson. Even after he sort of retired, he was still called upon to help, with different things. And yet the younger generation, is saying, I don't know who that is. And so, at least for me and a few others, that it's important, that we look back, like our Redcliffe culture. Yes, we were losing things, but yes, they were still talking, and they were still talking Ojibwe. So my grandma, my mother's mother, Margaret Baker Brissette Morris, and one of her sisters was Mary Baker Roy. My grandma lived across from where the VFW is, and there's that hood that has a house there. That's where her house was. And I can just remember it. It was so warm and so comfortable and so just loving, and everything. And now when I look at pictures, it was just like a tar paper shack. but she had it clean. There was those braided rugs all around. And so when Auntie Mary, a little story, when Auntie Mary would come and visit, and I'd be there with Grandma. First, they'd cry, they'd hug, they'd have a shot of whiskey. Then they'd start playing like bingo or cards with each other. And they were cheating on each other, sitting right across from each other. But they'd be there and they'd be talking, Chippewa in the language. And so some of the words like that would be used, a long time ago that are not used too much anymore. One is guaguash, and that refers to like being dirty. And they'd see somebody, I'm not pointing at you, Junior, but they would see somebody and they would say, "Oh my God, did you see his guaguash neck?" Well, then you knew that it was really dirty when they said guaguash. The other one was the word jibik that you hear all the time. And it kind of referred to like, even though jibik means root, but it referred to like medicine. And so when they would started the bingos and they'd have here, and the different ones at the time that were elders, they'd come in there and they'd play bingo, and somebody'd be winning, and they'd say, "Oh, they must have rubbed their jibik," and of course they'd laugh about it. But it's another word that was so common that we don't hear that too much unless we're with older ones now. I don't know if it was just the old ladies, but another um, slang would be when they'd be talking and they'd say, "Oh, did you see that tree? Oh, yanige, I seen that." So this kind of term yanige was one, and it was kind of like meaning like, "Oh my God," kind of thing. And another one that was sort of like a "oh my God" phrase was, "Oh, chokamek." Weren't they dancing hard like that? Oh, chokamek they were. Well, one time it was by Auntie Jenny, which a lot of people call her Grandma Jen. And I said chokamek. She said, "Oh my God." She said, "Your grandma used to say that all the time." So part of this, I guess, what at least to me and maybe some others, important to try to share those things, try to have people, and the older ones will remember that. And so like for today, when advertised about this gathering, and it's too bad out in WebEx land that you couldn't have any lugolade or hangover soup, but there was a reason of wanting to share that because that was a part, again, so much of our community culture. In growing up, again, going through a lot of changes, one of the things that I know I heard as a youngster is that when you're considering something, considering decisions, like you look, how does that affect the next 7 generations? So we hear that a lot about the 7 generations and, what is talked about or what is decided, how does that go for the future? Like a lot of other people, had a lot of struggles growing up and stuff like that. My dad was Louis Uncle Butts Peterson. He died in January 81 of cirrhosis of the liver. And then my mother died in September of 92. And she liked her brandy and she liked her cigarettes. And so for myself, started getting to that point, where the alcohol was really affecting and I wanted to quit. Well, finally had the courage on November 6, 1992 to start with my sobriety. And instead of going to treatment, I turned towards the traditions to help me with that. So it's been like a learning experience. When we talk about transitions, again, back in the 50s and 60s, there were some things that were kind of practiced, and yet there was things that were being lost. And so one of the things that has kind of risen, and I'm hoping that you can see this cradle board, this Gikendaasomin. And when Sharon and I got married, and then we were expecting our first son, Kelly, we did want to try to start our family off in that traditional way. Well, there was nobody around here that had cradle boards. It's very rare, even in some places like up in Minnesota. But again, it's made this comeback. And so that I think it was May 1977. We went to Tomahawk for the weekend, and we met Fran and Cheryl and Bobby Hugo. You know, we went there camping, and as we looked around Tomahawk, they had these gift stores, and this one gift store we went in, they had a lot of Indian crafts in their art, and it wasn't just the Japanese or made in China kind. There was like real things that were in there, and one of the things that was in there was this Gikendaasomin cradle board, and I think it was $150. And being a student at the time and not having very much money except to go out, no, really wanted this. So I took down the address, and I remember I was sitting in class at Northern College, and I wrote the owner of this and told him that, you know, we're expecting our first baby. We wanted to see about the cradle board. All we can afford is $75. Wrote him. He wrote back and said that he would sell it to us for $75. And so again, it was that transition of, you know, starting out like in that traditional and cultural way. And so this has been in our family going on 46 years. And it also includes having grandkids and great grandkids in here a little bit. Carolyn's over here. She's, you know, cousin. When her daughter Paige had Dakota, he's like 9.
He'll be 9 next month.
And so when he was a baby, they wanted to start him on the cradle board. So I let them borrow this. So Dakota started out in this cradle board, this Gikendaasomin. And after he got, I don't know, 6 months or so, then kind of, you know, weaned him away from that. Well, there was a community gathering that was going on, and I brought this there. And Dakota seen it, and he like almost kind of like climbed into it, even though he might have been like 8 or 9 months at the time. And so he was strapped in there. Next thing you know, he was sleeping. So it's a very, you know, powerful thing, and it has a lot of meanings. And hopefully there's more and more over the years with my artistic abilities, you know, try to learn, try to figure out how to make different things. And one of those is, you know, making the Gikendaasomin. And so Des LaPointe had her baby a few days ago or so. At first I thought about giving her like a pair of baby moccasins. And I thought, well, I want to do something else. So I ended up making a cradle board for her and gave it to her just about a week before she had the baby. So I'm assuming and hoping that, you know, they'll be using that for that baby.
Dr. Pete, can you say something?
Sure.
Okay, so bonjour.
Talk about
Okay, bonjour. Dr. Pete is also my grandson's way. And so today I was asking my grandson if he wanted to come up here tonight. When Jim used to live down in his old house down by Peterson's, the old one, he'd always go by there and he'd say, "There's way A, there's where way A lives." Well, tonight I asked him. I said, "Do you want to come with me up to your way A's?" He's going to be doing a speak. He's going to be speaking about life when he was a little boy growing up. He was thinking about it, and he said, "Nah." He said, "That's okay." He said, "But I'll still love him." So again, you know, that's what Dakota said. That was pretty cool. Nah, I'm not gonna go, but I still love him. I thought that was good. Yeah, to hear that.
Thank you. Again, part of this, you know, gets into this transition and diversity, and it depends, you know, wanting to share a few things. The other part is the baby moccasins. There was a time again that we lost that sort of Ojibwe or Chippewa style moccasin, and it would be just what you could get from that Tandy store. Remember Tandy, the leather company? They had kits you could put it together. But I wanted to start learning, so I would look at different moccasins. I would try it. The pair that I made for my son Kelly were not the Ojibwe style ones. My son John, we had the Ojibwe style ones, but they were made by this Mary Ackley from Mole Lake, and at the time she was like 95 years old, but here she was still doing the crafts. So we bought, you know, the puckered toe moccasins, and so some of you, I know, have seen these before. And so this is a pair of the puckered moccasin. And from what I understand, the way that you could tell if we were from the woodland tribes, especially like the Ojibwe or the Sac and Fox, Potawatomi, Menominee, was a kind of moccasins that we wore because they were puckered. So one of the interpretations of the word Ojibwe refers to the puckering of our moccasin. And I know it's been kind of said in other places, but when we would be at war and we'd capture our enemies, we'd place them on the fire till they puckered up. And people say, "Oh my God, did they?" Well, when they think about war and stuff that happens in war. And what I learned from Joe Rowe is that word Ojibwe also refers to like our written system, even though we didn't have an alphabet, but there was a way that where things were documented through the birch bark scrolls and the etchings that were on there, as well as the rocks and stuff like that. And so, might have been about 7 years ago, I went down to Tampa, Florida to visit my granddaughter Carrie Ann, and I took my grandson Johnny Mac. And that was the weekend that they had the Red Cliff powwow at the casino. So watching that every once in a while, near my granddaughter Raquel, she goes dancing by and she's got these great big winter boots on. I thought, oh, I'm gonna have to make her a pair of moccasins. So later on, when I got back, I made her a pair of those pucker toe moccasins. And the other one, Kathy Begay from LCO, for some reason, she just gave me these. And it's another style of puckering, but it's this split toe that you might have seen. One of these days, I'm going to try doing this. But in learning this, again, it goes back to teachings about, the starting out life in a good way. One is through like the Gikendaasomin. And the other day, this is a pair of baby moccasins that I made because a lot of times when I hear or know somebody that's expecting a baby, I'll do this. I'll make a pair and gift it to them and explain to them about the puckering, but also what I learned is with the baby moccasins that there needs to be a hole in the bottom of the sole. And it's believed that when the baby is born, that there's spirits that are going around watching over it. And the belief is that when they see the baby with the holes in their moccasins, they go, "Oh, that poor little baby, just pitiful. It's got holes in his moccasins. We'll protect it." So it's a way of protecting that and honoring those teachings and trying to carry those on. So got the cradle board, got the moccasins. One of the other parts, again, that we learn as we go along is about the importance of when the baby is inside growing, there's the umbilical cord. And after the baby is born, the umbilical cord is cut. Where the belly button is, there's that little piece that's there. And eventually that dries up and then they, take it off. Well, what I heard or what I've learned is that's called a disc. And the importance of that is saving that. And that's something that's supposed to help that baby on their journey throughout life. And so one of the things that people do is they might ask somebody about that disc if they'll make like a pouch for it or maybe a necklace or something. And so back again in my learning, it was probably about 1973, Dee Bainbridge approached me. She gave me some tobacco. She said, "My daughter just had a baby and the little granddaughter, whatever her name was, she said, I have her disc and I want you to make something for that disc to save it." Fast forward ahead, when Dee passed away, I guess about 10 years ago now, there was a family gathering. And of course, I recognized a lot of them, knew a lot of them, but here this young girl, this young woman came in and she had this necklace on. And I thought, oh my God, that's that necklace I made from 1973. There, almost 50 years later, she still had that necklace with her disc in there. That really made me feel good. I think Dee wanted to share something.
No, I just was going to ask you, how do you spell that word?
I just spell it D-I-S.
Okay. Mhm.
So throughout with the kids and grandkids, again, I have two sons. I have 10 grandkids. 6 are biological, and then in that way, and I got their step grandchildren in there, and then I've got 6 great grandkids right now. But when Kelly and his girlfriend Roxanne at the time had their baby, Raquel, who's going to be 15 on March 3rd, they brought tobacco, and then they had her disc, and they asked if I would make a pouch or something for Raquel. And some of these things, it's like you just kind of think about, how it's going to be, what it's going to be. And so I decided I was going to make her a necklace, and just wasn't sure what it was. And then as I start going along, this is the necklace that I made. And I'd be beading, and then Raquel, I don't know how old she was, maybe 3 or 4 years old, she'd come up and she'd give me the beads, give me a bead. And I thought, oh, one of these days, I'll explain to her how she helped make her necklace with the disc in it. And the ironic thing, and again, it wasn't that I wanted to do this, but it's a butterfly. And Raquel's Indian or spirit name is Gaa-Miskwaabikaang, butterfly woman. Just something that was meant to be. And so again, in trying to keep those teachings alive and understand, and trying to share those so that, people would have those. The other part, and some of this, and the reason I guess wanting to share this is in growing up, Tommy Joe was his little talk a couple of weeks ago, and they shared what it was like growing up in like the 40s and 50s, and then of course now I'm coming in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and that we've had this sort of like, again, transition backward. There's more and more of our culture, that's readily available, that's right there. There was a time, even in the 60s and 70s, where we weren't encouraged. We couldn't do anything cultural, traditional. If we did, sometimes people were still punished for that. And so some of these things that we're doing now are just so automatic, and hopefully that the younger generation, will have an understanding how fortunate they are to be able to just do that, without being punished or whatever. And so one of the things that has come again around full circle is the naming. And so it's very common right now when the baby is born that a name, ceremony is held not too long after. But it wasn't always like that. So on one side, there's my dad, Louis Uncle Butts Peterson. His mother was Angeline Gordon Peterson, dad Martin Peterson. And why am I saying that? Oh, so one of my dad's sisters was, most people would call her Grandma Jen, Auntie Jenny. She was our Auntie Jenny. She was probably about, I think, 94 maybe when she passed away. But, very strong Catholic, but yet she did a lot of cultural and traditional things that were just natural. And people would say, oh, Grandma Jen, oh, Auntie Jen, come and tell us something about Indian stuff. Oh, I don't know nothing about Indian stuff. And she'd be sitting there making moccasins and doing beadwork, just like nothing. Well, again, even though very strong in the Christian Catholic way, very strong in doing the different cultural things, it was important for her to get a spirit name, to get an Indian name. So her son, Robbie Wilson, and Diane was alive at the time, had a gathering, had a naming ceremony for her, and the name that Grandma Jen, Auntie Jen, was given at 85 years old, because again, it was important to her, was Guyaushk, White Crane Woman. And of course, if you looked at Auntie Jen, she had like gray hair and everything. She did look like a white crane. No, knowing Auntie Jenny, And so again, even though at one point we couldn't do these things, there was people that still wanted to do these things, and it might have took 80 years, 85 years. Whereas today now, it's just automatic, which is nice, but it's an idea that, we need to remember what it was like and why it was like that, and that things were able to survive, and they're growing and growing. And so, like I mentioned, back in the 50s, 60s, we might have had one or two people that had regalia. At that time, we could call them costumes, had that. But when you look at now, again, this transition and going back into learning and understanding our culture, we probably in Red Cliff have maybe like 5 different drum groups, if that many, or there might even be a couple more. There's probably over 100 or so tribal members that have regalia, different pieces, with the different categories that are there. And so again, it's something that has made a real strong comeback to us. The reason that I have these little figures here is for a couple. Can you pass this picture on, okay? So what I wrote about this picture that's going around is during the dedication of the Bayfield Post Office in 1970, relatives of William Baker, who carried the mail on foot from Bayfield to Superior during the Civil War area, were asked to participate. And I'm thinking it was like in June of 1970. It was like sort of summertime. At the time of this dedication, Mary Baker Roy, she's in the picture there, was the last surviving child of William Baker. Others involved were the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of William Baker. So as that's going around, you'll see there's the people that are in there. He would be my great-grandpa William. His wife was Angelique Sullier Baker and was a great granddaughter of Chief Buffalo. So what I have here is this family tree thing that I put together to try to understand, So on one side, there's like 1 million Gordons, and it goes back to maybe like 1700. But then on the other side, through my mother and through her mother, the Baker's side, then it goes back to Chief Buffalo. And as I kind of looked at that and kind of figured out, for myself, I'm like the seventh great grandson of Chief Buffalo. Teresa's sitting here. She would be a great granddaughter. I don't know. She might be the 6th or the 8th or the 9th, but there's a lot of connection that goes back to Chief Buffalo. And so, William Baker, like it said, he was the one that carried mail on foot from Bayfield to Superior. And when they opened that post office in Bayfield in 1970, when you go in the post office, you'll see that little plaque there that says something about 1970. So that picture there is the representatives that were there. You'll notice in the picture, one of the ones is my mother, Elma, and she's wearing a dress that was made by Susan J. Gordon. So my mother and Susie were actually first cousins because their mothers were sisters. So there was that connection there. And on one side, she was a cousin of my mom, and then on the other side, she was my auntie because she was married to my grandma Angeline's Gordon Peterson's mother. So again, connections. And so what's in here in this figure is that dress that Auntie Susie made like in 1969. And so she had it at it, and then whatever year it was, she gave it to Sharon to wanting to, keep it in the family and pass it on. And Sharon started having it renovated or revised. And so she started that process. When Sharon got sick with cancer, she gave it back to me to keep it in the family. And so I had it and trying to figure out, well, what should I do with this? What should I do? So I wanted to have it on display. I wanted to fix it up and have it on display. So that's what this is. That's that dress that was made by Auntie Susie Gordon that was used when they had the dedication of the Bayfield Post Office back in 1970. That relates back to our great-grandfather, William Baker, as he delivered mail back and forth. So that dress is probably like maybe like 70 years old right now.
Mm.
But again, it's been, what's that word when you put it's not renovated for clothing.
Yeah.
So it's been altered. And the other pieces that are on there are parts of Sharon's regalia that she had, that I wanted to integrate that into there. And so, wanting to share that as a way of trying to keep alive some of our Red Cliff history that people could, relate to. This next figure here, it's a representation of, his name is Gaa-Miskwaabikaang Blackbird. And I thought of reading this, but I got a story on it. But what it refers to is how his grandmother raised him. His grandmother was named Anagus, which means aunt. And when his grandma was young, she was watching just intensely these ants and how they were interacting, how they were taking care of themselves, how they were building their own homes. And one of the elders was watching her do that and decided to give her an Indian name, Anagus. And so when she started raising Gaa-Miskwaabikaang, she went to the elders and she also asked about giving a name. And so that elder, when he was out trying to think of the name, was sitting somewhere, and pretty soon there was these black birds that were just gathering by him, and they were just black and they were shiny. And he felt, oh, maybe that's what I should call them. So again, I put this together. Some of this is from my old regalia pieces. When I got this this figure thing, I had it at my old house, set it up. And then when I was working at the cabin through LCO, I thought, oh, I think I'll bring this down there and put it on display. Well, I thought I could just pick it up, put it in the back of the car. Pretty soon those legs came off, the arms came off. So it was all a piece, all part, got it to the cabin, was there for a while. And then when they got this building, I thought, well, I'm going to donate some stuff here if they, would want it. So I thought I could just pick him up, put him in the back of the truck and bringing him up here. Well, there's his legs coming off and his arms coming off. And I thought, God, I hope nobody's watching me, in the window doing something with this figure. Well, Jared helped me bring this up here. So again, these are up here for display, but it's the other part of a piece of sharing some of our Red Cliff community culture and history, that hopefully, we'll be able to continue on. Transition. I know Tommy Joel can relate to this, and I'm sure Junior could from over in Bad River. But it was very common in up to the 50s and 60s where we didn't have running water. We had to haul water. We had to get water from somewhere, one of the local pumps. Because we didn't have running water, well, we didn't have indoor plumbing, indoor bathroom facilities. So there was outhouses. So our little outhouse was in the back. Tommy Joe, I'm sure your outhouse was somewhere over there. At Halloween time, being tricksters, people would go and try to take down the outhouses. You'd see some of them down at the old housing farm. There would be somebody's outhouse that they moved out. And then we had slop pails. That was very common in our kitchen where, well, that's what they used for, to put when you're cooking and stuff. But it was also where we would go to the bathroom. Our slop pails, and we take slop pails up and dump it.
How can you tell a Red Cliff woman?
By her slop pail ring.
Slop pail ring? That was told me by Rachel Man.
I'd say there's probably 4 in here that have slop pail rings. No. But, it was part of that transition, that as we were going through and as time was progressing on how we begin to change. And so, pretty soon, like in the late 60s into the 70s, we got this community water system. People started getting, their bathroom facilities in the house. There, at the time, too, there was this, it was called Home Improvement or Housing Improvement HIP program. And people that were running for council, they'd say, well, if you vote for me, I'll get you some HIP funds and you'll get a bathroom. So it was used for many things. It might be difficult to hold these up, but I got some things here. You can take a look at them because one of the teachings again in learning is that we are supposed to be humble. We're supposed to be non-materialistic. One of the teachings are if like somebody gives you something, you can either keep it or you can pass it on. And if you pass it on, it's like that helps like that you're more powerful, that you're more good, have good person, good ethics. And so some of the things that I have here, there is a breastplate that was given to me by my sister Mary when I turned 40. And also this choker was a part of that. When I turned 40, Sharon and I, was in 1996, we were the head dancers for the Red Club Paulo that year. And so it was really special, turning 40, being asked to be the head dancer. And one of the persons that I got to be real good friends with was Beverly Vandervander Moore. So her mother was Angie Basney Vandervander. Angie was related to Franklin and all of those Basneys there, but just very creative. So if you go up to the clinic now, you'll see these hangings that are up there, leather. They've got painted on there. They've got beautiful fringes. She's the one that did that, and it seemed like in the Basney family, one of their callings is doing like leather work. And so when I turned 40, also being friends with Beverly, not only here but at the polo, she had given me this dance stick. It's beaded. It also has a eagle claw on it, as well as this eagle fan. So 40 was a good year for me. But it's the idea of, people gifting you things, gifting you things. On that breastplate, there's a neck medallion that's on there. And so in this Indian way, we have our blood relatives, but then we also have others that kind of sort of take you in, maybe adopt you, maybe this and that. And so I got to be real good friends with this elder. She was half Ho-Chunk and half Prairie Band Potawatomi, but she was full blood. Naomi Shigoni Russell became really good friends. We shared up. She worked at Great Lakes at the same time I did, and so she rented a room for me. And unfortunately, she ended up getting cancer, and going through that process. So we, a lot of us decided to have a benefit for her down in Wisconsin Rapids, where that's where she was living. So we had the benefit, and she was thanking people for that. And then finally she held up this necklace and she said, I want to give this necklace to a special person, one that I considered my grandson. And she gave me that necklace, so that became a part of my regalia. And in the Ho-Chunk way, very interesting, very complex. But if you have like a grandma, then, and if they have sisters and brothers, then they become your grandmas and grandpas too. And so one of Naomi's sisters is Arlene Shigoni, who's still alive. Arlene's, I think she's the treasurer of the Great Lakes Native American Elders Association. And so you'll see this woven sash here that Arlene, who's my gaga, gave to me, because of that special connection, special relationship that we have. And so it's this idea of the continuous learning and learning things. So a lot of times when people give me things, it's not disrespectful that I pass them on. It's part of that teaching, but yet part of the idea of keeping those traditions going on. And then those people, are so blessed in being able to get those. So there's been a lot of things that have been given to me that I've given away. Over the years, I lost count of the pipes that I received from people, and it just at that time didn't feel right that I would have that. Someone gave me one that felt right that I still have, but I gave those pipes I gave to other people that they could utilize. So I asked Juice and Carolyn to come here and if they want to add some stuff about when we were growing up. Keep it clean now. Of when we were growing up, and then want to kind of get into like that part as we were teenagers and what it was like. Of course, we can always come back to it if you want to think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Carolyn, you want to sit a little closer? So
Well, the only thing that I think about, that I thought about, is friendship. Again, I had 8 brothers and 1 sister, and I always wanted to hang around with the guys. I always wanted to be with the boys. Well, one thing that my mom used to say, you can't do that because you're a girl. You can't do that because you're a girl, they're boys. So no, you can't do that. And the boys could do things. So I used to get angry about that. But one thing I think that we had was with each other is I think that we always had like a friendship, and we always worked. We always worked hard. We always had to have a job. We had to have a job with the NYC, with whatever. We had to have jobs, and fortunately we were able to get jobs because our income was within that category. And having jobs, that wasn't all of our money. I remember having jobs and my mom would take the money and she'd give me a couple dollars, but the money she'd go get money. We were poor growing up. We didn't have water. We didn't have water. We didn't have a furnace. We didn't have that. But I think we definitely had friendship. We didn't ride cars. We had to walk. And I think that was like a shock for my son Adrian after he graduated from high school and he wanted to ride. Well, he didn't need to ride anymore because he wasn't going to basketball practice or whatever. So I stopped doing him rides. But we had to walk all over. And I think in having that, it made us more accountable. And I'm not saying if that was good or bad, but it definitely made us more accountable and having to have chores. Auntie Jenny was very strict. Auntie Jenny, if you didn't do something right, for me, I didn't scrub the floor right. I had to re-scrub the floor all over. And we had wooden floors. So we had to scrub the floors. And that was good because I didn't really like it at that time. But now I still scrub my floors because I can see, for me now, when I scrub my floors, I can see how my floor is looking. With being in a trailer, I can see if everything is intact yet. So I appreciate having that opportunity to have learned how to scrub floors and to scrub floors. But friendship was very important to us. I think friendship was very important. And I think that, again, there is a difference. You know, some of us were poorer than the other one. And that definitely, I think that, that along with, we showed it. I mean, because, again, my mom being a single parent, and when my father passed on, when my dad passed on, I noticed, people ask me about deer meat and things like that. We didn't have a lot of that. The reason we didn't was because, and that it's not like that now, people are more giving. But when we didn't have that, when we didn't have our father, we didn't get the deer meat. We didn't get all that. We lived off commodities. We had to live off commodities. But growing up with, I'll be 67. My mom passed on at 64. So, so we might be living a little bit longer. That might be taking place. I think I'll pass with that right now, and I'll come back maybe later.
Well, again, in sharing different things, when I turned 19, Maxine, not when I turned 20, that's a different story. When I turned 19 at my old house, we had a party, of course, at the beer and all this and that. And different ones came there. And one of the persons that came there was Sammy Nawago. So again, Sammy Nawago and my mother were first cousins because their mothers were sisters. So again, that connection. Um, and just really shocked, but I still wear it today. When I was 19 years old, Sammy gave me this bear claw necklace, and I had to, of course, fix it up over, because it got wore out and stuff. But I still wear that as a part of my regalia, as a part of that remembrance. Like how, even though we might not have been in some people's eyes traditional, we were still very culturally community connected. And when Carolyn mentioned about how they didn't get any meat, it's kind of surprising because I was going to mention that with my mom being single then, and I was the last one left in the house. My auntie Viola, her sister, would come there, as well as Emily Defoe. So when I was a teenager, there was those three women that were there, and learned a lot of things from them. Every once in a while, either Sammy Nawago or Mike Nawago, cousins, they would stop and they would drop off something like fish, deer meat, even partridge. And so one time when my Auntie Vi was there, she wanted to make partridge soup. She called our Auntie Mary Roy. And so there's my Auntie Viola, maybe like around 61 or so, calling our auntie, who was probably like in her mid 50s or mid 80s, asking, Auntie, how do you skin this, partridge? And over the phone, they're talking, and Auntie Mary said, well, you gotta be careful about this area because if you cut that, then it'll poison the meat or whatever. And so it was just this connection there, that how people would be willing, to share things to some.
Mhm. So I think too, I heard someone talking, another gal, and she lived in Bayfield, and we think that we're poor and just whatever that means, not having something that the other one might have. But anyways, when we were talking, she told me that she never knew what her mom was cooking. She thought it was chicken until she went into her kitchen, and what her mom was cleaning was squirrels. And she said there was about 6 squirrels in the oven, and that's what they're eating. So that was interesting too. So again, survival, and when I take it back, because Uncle Lenny, Mama used to like white fish livers, and so Uncle Lenny or one of Uncle Sonny's boys would drop raw white fish livers. But yeah, so it's different. But I remember when Jim was talking, and he was talking about us being in school. And I remember we didn't, when he talked about our language and our culture, and how that was again colonialism, and I say all this respectfully because we don't know all that, but we learn it along the way on things and how it went. But I remember in school, I remember we were in school, and I remember the day that Ada Deer came to our school. Ada Deer came to our school, and she had said that's when the Indian reorganization, it had just passed, right? Because I remember we were in the hallway. We were in the hallway. I was in the hallway, and she came walking down the hallway, and she was young, and she was saying that had just happened, and how that was for us to be able to know. And now, and she became to be a phenomenal woman for all of us. But anyways, I'll just say that much.
Well, in going back to like in the late 60s, as things were starting to change nationally, and Tom Joe mentioned this too when he did his talk about the influence of the American Indian movement on the national level. And then pretty soon, how that got down to the tribal levels. And it was a real awakening for a lot of people to start expressing ourselves, to start, claiming, reclaiming, announcing, celebrating, about our tribalness, about our Indianness. And so when I think about our youth club, it was at a time when Great Lakes Intertribal Council was so active and involved. They would get funding for things, then they would pass it down to the tribes. And one of the ones that was started at the time the youth club. So about 1969, we had our youth club, and again, I won't tell about the other parts, but we did a lot of stuff in the community where we would have bingos and we do fundraising. We'd have dances, at the school. And so it was a real, transition to us because nationally there was Indian stuff that was going on, as well as within our communities, things that were going on. And so people, they do celebrate about the Apostle Islands National Lecture Club. Celebrate that. Well, back in the mid 60s, what the government wanted to do was they wanted to take about 4,000 acres of Red Cliff and about 6,000 acres of Bad River to include in that park system. And the two tribes, very much opposed that. And so there was ones that from Red Cliff and Bad River that went out to testify, to oppose this. Couple of the ones that I remember from Bad River were Sam Livingston and Ron Madej, and there might have been others. From Red Cliff, there was Ted or Albert Brissett. There was my ma Elma. There was Philip Gordon that went out there. And again, it was successful that they were able to stop that so they didn't take our land. And here it was, in the 1960s, and they're still trying to remove us because there was talk if they took that land from Red Cliff and put it in the Park Service, we might have to relocate. Red Cliff might have to relocate. So there was opposition there. And a couple of years ago, when they had the 50th, I think it was 50th celebration of the Apostle Islands National Lakeshore Park, they had it down at the casino here, and a lot of people were there and they were just, proud and this and that. And they had this special coin quarter that was made that they gave to everybody there. Again, very special. What did they have on the back of that coin was a kayak. There was, that I can remember, there was nothing like tribal about that coin. And from my thinking, well, kayaks have just become popular in the last 15 to 20 years, whereas here's our birch bark canoes, have been here for thousands and thousands of years. So again, part of our challenge is that we have to continue sharing these things so that people can understand, where we come from and why, we have the things that we do in this day and age. The same way with, that fishing case, Gurnall versus the state, and how we went, 6 of our tribal members went, were arrested. What's really nice is, I believe it's through Glyphwick, they recorded that with Ronnie DePerry and a couple of others, because Ronnie's the last survivor of that group that was in there, to talk about what we had to do to reaffirm our rights that were based on the Treaty of 1854 with hunting, fishing, and gathering. And so in the late 60s, again, as we're coming up with, wanting to be more assertive, around that time, 1969, maybe a little bit earlier, over at the Ashland School, Bad River was able to put together the efforts to get a homeschool coordinator in the school system. Well, again, way back when Great Lakes Intertribal was, they'd get the money, they'd pass it out. Oneida would do this. Well, everybody wanted to do like Oneida. Flambeau would do it. Everybody wanted to do like Flambeau. And so when we heard that the successful efforts that Bad River had with getting a homeschool coordinator in the Ashland School District, we, as in the youth club, as well as our parents and stuff from the community here, got together to start that effort to have a presence in our school. And so 2 of the people that came over from Bad River to help was Wolf, Dory Wolf, and Mary Big Boy. And they told us how, what they went through. So that helped us with the efforts in our community. And I think it was, when you get older, you can say, well, I think it was, and it might have been, and maybe it was, and get away with it. So I think it was about in 1970 that Alan Bear got selected as a homeschool coordinator and started in the school system. And that was such a major thing for us, to be able to have that tribal presence in the school. And a couple years later, the school was able to get funding for this urban renewal project. They call it then they had a council, school community council, SCC. But a part of that was the efforts to again start looking at our culture and the retention of that. So not only did we have Alan as in the school, but there was Jewel Zoldos. Eventually, she got remarried to Jewel Knopf. Jewel was a member, I believe, from Bad River. Her mother was Hattie Thomas. So Jewel was a teacher in the school system. And again, going into the school system, I know for me and a lot of others, it was such a comfort to see Alan and Mrs. Zoldos. But then also that's when Dee Bainbridge, Tiny Cadet, Ruth Buffalo, Gina Defoe, and then Mary Lou Gary also came to work at the school. So we started having this tribal presence within the school system that, just really made a difference, with the way that things were. Still a struggle because there was still the prejudice. Teresa was physically manhandled by one of the teachers. And I don't know if you remember, her and I ended up calling AIM. Called AIM, hung up, forgot all about it. One day, Billy Blackwell and Tony Bender came to the house and he says, "We're from AIM." And I said, "AIM!" And he had those dial phones and they were dialing Teresa's number. "Get down there, AIM is here." But again, it was that idea of, wanting to have that support, wanting to help us, as we were going through a lot of things, with transition and stuff like that. And so it laid a lot of the foundation, where if you look at the Bayfield school system now, I guess the latest figure I heard was of the 520 or 420 students, about 80% are Indian. So it's like we're kind of an Indian school, but it's still a public school. We have a superintendent that's a tribal member. I think she still is. Nicole Boyd, our tribal chairperson, is the president of the Bayfield School Board. And who else is on there from Red Cliff? Is Cindy Garrity still on there? No?
Raymond DePerry.
Oh, Raymond DePerry. And so again, if you remember way back in the 70s when there was this annual meeting of the Bayfield School Board, many, many people from Red Cliff went there and was able to get the school board members increased from 5 to 7, with 2 of those members being from Red Cliff. So prior to that, it was just, I don't mean to say this negatively, but it was a majority were non-Indians, except for Jigs Lamori. He had been the president for quite a few years, so at least, again, there was that Indian presence that was there. And so, we did have that going on.
And Jim, I think that when we got Alan in there, that he began to open those doors for the education that we were all hungry for. Because the college students, they focus more on helping the other race more than us, and we didn't have those opportunities. But when Alan came, he opened that door to education for us. And another person that did that was Brady Perry through the Upward Bound program. So we got to experience what college life was like, what not just being in Red Cliff and getting out there and seeing what it was for our generation. I'll go back to my grandma Mary Roy, and the naming and how important that is. My grandma spoke fluent French and fluent Ojibwe, but my grandma also had an Anishinaabe name, and I just found it out within the last year. And her name was Gikendaasomin, which meant big water woman, and grandma was big, and I was really surprised at the history that I was hearing from my other cousins. But we talked about what Ray opened the doors for that education for us, because once we graduated, we didn't know how to go about filling out the applications. We didn't know how to do all that, but Alan and Ray opened those doors for us. And I think culturally, we didn't do too much we were searching and searching and searching, and our generation open those doors more for the Indian power, the culture, the dance that we almost lost, except for a handful of us when Joe Rose came over with somebody else, and there was 5 or 6 of us, and without them coming to do that, we would have lost our dance. But through that, we used to practice down by the old Gikendaasomin in the basement down there. So thank God for that we had those people that would come and guided us through all that. You know, and when we were growing up, I didn't even realize we were poor. You know, I had come from a big family. I was raised by my grandma, a lot of my aunties. My grandma Roy, when they used to have the old rummages, my grandma would go get the old wool skirts. All my aunties would sit in a circle. We would take the buttons, the zippers, whatever we could use. Everything had a purpose. Everything we used it. So we'd sit there, and the wool skirts made excellent blankets. We cut squares and sewed by hand. I was sewing at 5, 6 years old with my grandma. So, and that carried on to this day. So, I still do blankets and quilts and all that. But the importance of everything that we learn from our grandparents on up to the future, all has that connection. You know, even with what Alan and Ray did for us. You know, I thought we had a really nice, beautiful growing up, because I didn't realize that we were poor. We had a connection, we had friendship, we looked after one another, we protected one another.
The only thing that made me realize that we were poor, and it take, you know, because again, we have to look back at ourselves to figure, and I'm not proud to say this, but I'm going to say that. So I went to, because we had to go to church on Christmas Eve.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to church.
Yeah.
And I had a pair of shorts on. I had a pair of shorts on with tights and high boots. That was really inappropriate. That wasn't, but that's the clothes I had to wear. You know, so you should have gave me a skirt. What you should have, because I would have been with you, you know. But so that's what, now when I think back, that's the only reason I would say that.
But
'Cause I
all of
didn't
us
have
kids
anything
on
else.
New Year's Eve, we would all meet. We'd all get down to the road, we'd walk to church. All of us down the road, they'd meet me, we'd meet him, we'd go down the road. All of us kids would walk to church on Christmas Eve. After church, we'd all have little trinkets or something. We'd all trade gifts outside the church, and then we'd go home.
Yeah. It was.
It was nice.
It was nice.
beautiful.
I want to share these 2 pictures with them. The first one, I know you didn't see it too well, but is that picture of that post office dedication in 1970 that was shared, and then the story about that dress. And I didn't tell them, but these 2 pictures are passed around. One of them is back in the 40s and 50s into the 60s. One of the things that people would do to make money is they would go down and pick herring or pick fish in Bayfield. And so here's a picture. There's Hank Brzett, Morris Brzett, Elsie Brzett, and Mrs. Reuben Gustafson that are picking fish, you know. And again, it was something that people had to do in order to get money for the whatevers. And I don't know, Tommy, did you ever pick fish?
Yeah.
When you was...
Junior and senior in high school, I had a dog to pick fish. I picked for her regatta.
Yeah, the elders were kind to us. No, the elders were kind to us. They always fed us, or, you know, when we'd get the dog and not going home for supper, you know, someone would bring us down something, a food, some kind of food, or Elmer Gerna would send us a loaf of bread.
Well, the other part of that too, when Carolyn said elders would take care of us, the other part, even if they weren't like our parents, but they were elders, if we were doing something we weren't supposed to, and they said, stop it, most of the time, we stopped it. If we didn't stop it, then they would tell our parents, then we would get it.
And ancestors had every right to discipline children. Nobody said like, oh my God, you can't do that, that's my kid.
Yeah.
And they get so offended nowadays when you try to help discipline, but back then, it was accepted that you had to listen to that auntie, and if she gave you a crack on the butt, you deserved it. The mothers never questioned none of that or anything. They,
Yeah.
you know, that was your aunt. You had to listen. They had to, you know, look after you. Same with the uncles. You had to listen.
What I passed out was this a little packet of information, and maybe we're out there in WebEx land. You could send, I guess, in the chat your email address. If you're friends with me on Facebook, don't friend me anymore. No. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you know, send me like your email address, and then we'll send this packet to you. What it's called is Guyaushk Personal Medicine Wheel. And again, I mentioned having that courage and that strength to go into sobriety, which also increased and helped me in my spirituality. And even on a little piece of paper, I started kind of writing it out because I had to try to understand, you know, what that means now for me. And so on my own personal medicine wheel, I integrated the importance of like the 4 directions, the 4 sacred colors, the 4 stages of life, the 4 seasons, and then being in balance with my heart, mind, body, and soul. So the 4 directions, north, east, southwest. 5th direction is Mother Earth. 6th direction is Father Sky. And the 7th direction is ourselves, you know, each of us. Up in the left-hand side, it has learning life's ways through our elders. And it has 1, be yourself, find your spirituality, get an education, do what makes you happy, but do it good. So I think it was in when the class of 1996 was getting ready to graduate, and at that time, you know, we had the banquet, honors banquet for them, and I was asked to be the speaker at that time. And I thought, geez, when I graduated from high school and when I graduated from Northland, I don't even remember who was the speaker because I was more worried about the parties and, you know, getting all that in place. So what I decided to do is go and approach 4 elders and ask them for their advice that I could share, you know, with others. And so what's on here that comes into my personal medicine wheel is those teachings. And one was from Dennis White. And he said, encourage our people to be themselves. We are in a time when people are trying to find themselves. People turn to drugs and other things and gangs with their symbols and colors. In our Anishinaabe culture, we have sacred colors and symbols. They could turn towards those to help them with their individuality, as well as beginning a journey to retain our culture and history. And at first I worried when I approached these 4, what if they said the same thing? Well, it happened that each one shared something so different that to me became so powerful. And so my namesake, my very good friend, Little Bird, B'nai John Anderson, when I asked him, he said, encourage them to find their spirituality. And how he taught classes throughout his career and utilized different textbooks. And one thing that people won't find in textbooks is their spirituality. It is a journey that we all need to make and experience. And on my journey, what I've been able to find out is having a respect for whatever people believe in. You know, it's not for me to judge, you know, that they should follow this and do that. But it's like each of us within ourselves to find what makes us happy for being spiritual. And again, I mentioned about Naomi Russell in that Indian way. She became my Gaga. I became her grandson. She said, and she had a master's degree. She said, encourage him to get an education. She said, a long time ago, our elders would teach us what we needed to know to survive. But today it's different. We need to remember those traditional things, but we need to also pursue education to help us, you know, in the modern day and age. And the last one was from Auntie Jenny. Grandma Jen. And some of you remember how she talked right out. She said, encourage them to find something that makes them happy, but do it good. If you're going to be a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger there is. If you're going to scrub toilets, be the best damn toilet scrubber there is. And again, as I shared that, it became such a life thing that I still use it. I still encourage people, about looking to our elders for that life's way. This also has been a learning experience. And talking about our culture and our teachings and our traditions and even with our language. In English, there's this word called ethics. And I tried to look to see, what did we have in terms of ethics? Well, we don't really have a word for ethics, but what I discovered, what I found, what I realized is more important than this word ethics is the 7 traditional Anishinaabe teachings. And not that they're in top order or anything, but one is Nibwakawin, wisdom, how we seek to learn. Zagada Idawewin, love for each other and ourselves in everything we do. Manajadawin, respect. Everything has a spirit and therefore deserves respect. Zungadeewin, courage. When we have a strong heart, we are able to face challenges with courage and integrity. Honesty, to do what is right. Guyaushk the basin namoin, humility, to understand that we are humble beings, and the Buiwin, truth. Each of us holds the truth in our hearts. And so again, we have a lot of teachings that can help us in our lives if we're wanting to, if we're willing, if we're committed to, making some type of improvements within ourselves. So we have a lot of teachings. And so we've been through a lot of transition where at one point, not only the government, Christianity was trying to eliminate us, destroy us. They were trying to move us west of the Mississippi. We were all over the place. Somebody said, they probably spent billions and billions of dollars in trying to make us something that we weren't. But yet there was that strong desire to continue on, to be able to, look to our traditions to help us. What's also included in here is an article or a paper that was done by Dylan Krissick. Dylan's mother is Gretchen Morris, whose Gretchen's parents are Marvin and Joanne Morris. And Dylan is getting ready to graduate from UW Superior. And so his final paper was Ojibwe spiritual practices from the 1930s to the 1970s. And it's really ironic that when he approached me and some of the other elders in Red Cliff to share how it was, growing up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and then what it's like to this day and age. And so not only myself did he interview, but he interviewed Ronnie DePerry, Frank Montano, and someone called Mark, but I don't know who Mark is, but is in here. And each of them talk about what it was like growing up in Red Cliff and how they were treated and how it was really downplayed that we sort of shouldn't do anything that's cultural or traditional. But yet here we are in 2024, and there's been so many efforts, to bring that back and have that. And so it was just ironic that, here's this paper, and then this is kind of what we're talking about. We're going to try to play this one video.
Yeah.
It's the one, Wayne Bashu's birth party. And hopefully out in WebEx land, you'll be able to see this also.
I'm getting better. I've been sharing pictures.
So over the years in learning things, learning our language, one of the main teachers for myself and a lot of others was Dee Bainbridge. And Dee, would share a lot of things that she learned, like from her grandma and others. And for whatever reason, I can say the Our Father, just I can say it like right now. I can't say blueberry pie. Even when I look at it and see it, I gotta, really break it down, spell it out. Cindy Garrity is one, she can say blueberry pie just like that. So it's this constant learning. And one of the legends, or one of the teachings that Dolores shared, and she had it typed out, and I've had it for like 50 some years and learned it. I still have to look at the paper to recite it. But we had a community storytelling back in 2011, and I asked Diane Goslin Bear Defoe Ba if she would help me with this. And so, not that one, the other one. So if you can play it. All mixed up and tangled up. So I have the written version. So Diane's going to say it in English, and I'm going to try to say it in Ojibwe.
Okay.
And this is Waynabuju's Bird Party.
Okay. A long time ago, Waynabuju said,
Kichimewijagi we Waynabujugi ikido.
there will be a big dance today.
Wichinimi ding nongum.
All the birds will come here.
Gakinabanishik de Biajawanoma.
Everyone will have a good time.
Gakina weadam and Wayndagozid.
Make different sounds.
Anochin wayok.
Dance hard.
Aina gok nimian.
Nobody can see.
Gawina wea the wabasin.
Everyone will dance blindfolded.
Gakina wea the Gaa-Miskwaabikaang.
So that's what they did.
Midashkai Jichigewad.
They danced hard.
Gichinimawad.
They sang loud.
Aina gok.
One bird thought, what's going on here?
Midash Beja Kinang Adin Joebakoma.
Nobody could see what's going on here.
Gawina wea the wabasin.
Secretly, he peeked at Waynabuju to see what he was doing.
Gimoj Dashki went. Giwabamad Waynabuju Jichiged.
As many as he could catch, he caught, broke off their necks and threw them on the side.
Minike go debenad, Gishki Gwebenad, Paganad.
The one that saw him hollered,
Gawabamad Chibibagid.
hey, Waynabuju is killing us.
Haya Waynabuju Nisabonan.
Everyone got scared.
Gakina wea Zagazi.
They ran out.
Gizagazabatod.
The one that hollered was slow running out.
Oawdashka Bibagid Gibekadazi Zagazabatod.
Waynabuju was mad when he saw the one who hollered. He stepped on him and broke his back.
Ginishkadazi Waynabuju Wabamada wow. Mi Dashki Patanskawad Kapoka Banaro Bakwan.
His eyes are red.
Migwe Beka. Miss Kozi Guyaushk Jigun.
So that is how he looks today.
Migwe Janagozid Nongom.
The duck they call the hell diver.
O Ao is in a castle Jingabis. Quack, 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 quack. Thank you. So again, part of that is trying to look at all of these different resources that are out there, all of these different ways to learn, to continue to learn. Having that special video with cousin Diane, is just so awesome. And kind of in closing, and we'll leave it open if people want to sort of ask questions or whatever. But is this poem that I wrote, and originally the character that was in there was called Kitchinoden or Big Wind. And then over the years, for some reason, I decided to change it. So this is called Thinking Back. Each day, Siegel awakens with new thoughts and ideas to what the future holds, the survival and existence of a great people. In his ideas, he thinks of the new day and age. In his thoughts, he tries to visualize a simpler life. As Siegel is sitting at home, he calls out for Nokomis. When no one answers, he remembers she has gone to a place where there is a better life. He remembers a simpler life that is gone, a life when everyone took care of each other. He thought of the old people standing, talking, walking, dancing, and laughing. Where did they go? When faced with this question, he can remember each one leaving this world to the next, of each person's wisdom and knowledge gone and lost forever. The memories he has of the past are his key to the survival of the future. He sits back, ponders of today's complications and yesterday's memories. Each day, as Siegel awakens with new thoughts and ideas to what the future holds, and realize he can survive because he remembers a life long ago. And sometimes, I don't know, psychologists, psychiatrists, professional people will tell people that you should let things go, from the past. Well, in one part, yeah, you should, different things. But the other part, in our culture, in our teachings, in our traditions, it's so important for us to remember how things happen and why they happen, and the stories and that we have about Wayne Bashu, and what that wisdom that he shares with us to kind of help us as we go along is very important. There was a time that the clan system was so active and so involved, and it is coming back, but it was one of the guidelines, I guess, is that you couldn't interact or couldn't be with someone from the same clan system. So Hattie Thomas was from Bad River. Way back in the mid 50s, her daughter was asked by a person from Bad River to go to the dance, to go to the prom. And what Hattie did and had to do is she had to go back and see what clan that kid was from, because if they were from the same clan, they couldn't. And so it just happened that they were from different clans. But again, it was something that was so important, with the way that we were supposed to look at things. What I understand also is, again, with that clan are not supposed to interact with each other in an intimate way, but people that were from the Deer clan were doing that. And there was a concern, and what I understand or what I learned and heard is that then the Deer clan was abolished because of that, and they went into different clans. And so it's something that's important to know. Whether we practice it or not is different. One time there was a couple that was getting married, and my sister Donna was talking to Margie Nuago Pascal, and she said, well, Margie, aren't they related? And Margie said, well, they're not cousins below the belt. And so, again, we look at things differently in this day and age. As we come to a closer, anybody want to share anything? Anybody want to share anything out on WebEx land?
Bonjour, Jim. This is Christy. How are you? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, cousin.
Hi, bonjour, bonjour from Albuquerque. Back when I was taking my associates in La Coudray College at the time, before they changed over to university, I had Jim Pete for a beading class. And that was at the old elderly center at the time. And I moved back. Let me back up a little bit. I moved back up onto our reservation in 2010. I moved off in 85 with my mom down to the Chicago area. And down there, I didn't know anything about our culture. I didn't get that opportunity to do, the gatherings, like the powwows that we have and stuff nowadays. But, I was proud to move back, start to learn about our culture. I have a lot to learn. My kids, when I moved up in 2010, were small. They, got to go to school with the family members, cousins, friends, and they got to learn about the culture way more than I have. So this brings me back to when I had the, beading class with Jim. He's like, it was a medallion, the first medallion I made, and Jim's like, "Oh, Chrissy, you still don't listen like when you were back in the old, growing up on the res, riding around on your bike. Oh, you're just so bossy, Missy." So this brings back, I asked Jim if I could record and ask him all important questions like, how'd you start your beading? Who, taught you or teached you, sorry, back then. And I did a video on it. And do you still have that, Jim?
Yes.
Yes, and I got an A+, and it was, an honor to hear, how he got started, about, past relatives and stuff. So, like I said, I have a lot more to, learn about our culture. I've been back home, and yeah, it's great to hear stuff like that from our elders, especially cousin Carolyn, talking about our past and everything. Yeah, I missed it, and I'm glad to be back home, where I can learn.
Me good, it's Chrissy.
Good.
Well, there's no word for goodbye, but closest that we come to is saying Gigawabmin. So, Miigwech, Gigawabmin. I got a standing ovation here.
You will in a couple minutes.
Yeah. As everybody rolls
How
out.
old were you when you got your Anishinaabe name? And who gave it?
It was 1978 out at Raspberry. John Lilbert, Renee Johns.
Okay.
Actually, I have 3 names. The first one was given to me by Beverly Bearhart and Hazel Hart, and then at Upward Bound it was Magisi Tawag Eagle's Ear. And then in high school with Dee, the one that she gave me was Gagoose, Little Porcupine, and then Guyaushk.
So you could use any one of those, right?
I guess, but I do
Okay,
the
but you
Guyaushk.
do the, okay.
So today is Peggy Nawago Dasant's birthday. And again, when she was in high school and working with or being with Dee, the name that she got was Gashkadno Gisis. So that's her Indian name, Peggy, for the month of November.
What's that translate to?
Home of the big. I said something I shouldn't have said. Sorry.
But later, yeah, and then she did get it, her other name is Ozawa Benesi.
Oh, okay. Good.
Lisa, how about talk about your name?
When my friend here was talking about eating squirrels, I was reminded about my own childhood. I'm from Minnesota, and we lived close to Lake Canyon for a while. And I mean, I don't know who I would be or if I would even be alive if it weren't for a wild game, honestly. But the thing that I wanted to raise, just to let people know that when my dad would go out in the woods, when we lived in the woods, like square in a pine forest where, deer and bear and all kind of pictures would come into our front yard, and that was just part of my growing up years. But the thing that I wanted to share with everyone, that everybody was poor. Not as poor as Indians, but everybody was pretty, you know, they were struggling. And as a matter of fact, the game warden for that area would go out with the Indians, would go out with my dad, and he'd be shining deer right along with us, you know. So it's, you know, they were struggling too. And I think you wanted to restore that. Yeah?
Yeah. Oh.
Or refurbish it.
Kathy, you want to just give us 4 numbers?
All right. Oh. I'm almost done right now.
One of the things I like to do when we have gatherings is do like a little raffle or door prize. How about if I say a number?
Okay.
15?
So 1 through 26.
15.
15. Oh, Roland Lemieux Jr. Oh no, it's his junior.
He always wins.
He always wins.
Always jealous.
21.
Sandra LaDrew.
Oh.
You always win, Jim.
4.
Kathy Guari.
Ooh, nice.
All right. 69. No.
Jim Pete.
19.
Ava.
Eva.
Oh.
Oh. What is it?
You can redo mine.
What's that?
You can redo mine.
Okay. 13.
13. Paul Morris.
Paul Morris from the great state of Maryland.
That is me.
This will be sent. You know, when you have to pay the postage.
Yeah, I'll pay the postage, yeah.
COD.
Yes.
No, this is a cousin of mine. He lives out in Baltimore, Maryland. It's tuning in. And his dad, or his grandpa, was Dick Morris that grew up in Bad River and Red Cliff. So you got this nice little booty.
Right. I'm excited.
Did you want to do a word book? Because I have another one.
Well, I think, we'll do this worksheet.
Oh, the Robin.
We got a couple more raffles that we're going to do. Come on. Okay, we've got this beautiful mug here. Number 9.
Number 9. Lulu Garrity.
Oh, nice.
Woo! Lulu Garrity. Number 18.
Linda Gordon.
Linda Gordon, Tommy Joe's Linda, this Robin book.
Thank you. Which
How about number 3?
Number 3. Tommy Joe.
Okay.
Tommy Joe, he'll get a dream catcher. 17.
Mona.
Ramona. Cousin.
Mona, this is that Robin book.
Oh, awesome. I'll pick it up from the library this weekend.
Oh, okay. I'll give it
Does
back
that
to
work?
Kathy for you.
Does that work, Kathy?
Yep.
McGrich?
24?
24. Shane Stelgala. Stelija.
Shane Stalika, you're still on there?
I'm here, Jim.
Good.
Miigwech.
Here is Rini Burzett that grew up in Red Cliff. Rini's dad was Morris and mother was Lucille or Babe. So we have this book here that'll be sent to you. If you want to send me your mail on Facebook,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
great.
All right. That's it.
All right, thanks again. This thing says battery running low.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing we're done then.
Thank
Miigwech,
you.
everybody.
Thank you,
Miigwech.
McGrich. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I don't know.